Welcome, spirit warriors. There's one mistake the universe does not overlook: giving demons front row seats to a soul that was handcrafted by heaven. Let that settle in your spirit. Because some of the people who smiled in your face weren't just being friendly. They were quietly dissecting your soul. They observed your light like architects studying sacred geometry, trying to replicate divine blueprints that were theirs to touch. They didn't earn access, but they moved like they had keys, whispering your name in rooms you were never meant to enter, making spiritual trades in your name as if your essence was a commodity on their black market agenda. And when they said things like, "Don't worry, I know them, I can get you in, I'm close to them, watch," they didn't realize they were about to crash a realm they weren't authorized to stand in. You are not a bridge for egos to cross. You are not a shortcut to power. You are a divine portal. And when uninvited souls try to barge into holy territory, it's not just offense, it's spiritual trespassing. And the alarms that go off, they're divine. No charm, no spell, no lie can deactivate them. The spirit realm operates on laws higher than human manipulation, and breaking those laws comes with consequences. Science backs this up. A 2021 study in neuroscience revealed that highly empathic individuals tend to attract manipulative people. Not out of admiration, but because their emotional depth and light make others feel exposed. Your aura doesn't just glow, it reveals. And when people aren't ready to face their own shadows, they either run or try to dim your brilliance. So they packaged your power, tried to sell it, tried to benefit from your presence without respecting your essence. But here's the truth. This soul is not for rent. Your temple is not open to squatters. And heaven, it's keeping tabs. Karma didn't just send warnings, it sent a demolition crew. Everything built on lies is being torn down. Every betrayal is being reversed. Every secret plot is unraveling. And in this video, we're diving into 7 explosive, soul-awakening truths about what happens when the chosen are exploited and how divine justice doesn't just respond, it roars. Stay close, it's about to get powerful. Point 1, they treated you like a shortcut to power. People saw your light, chosen one, and instead of celebrating it, they tried to extract it, like spiritual thieves reaching for something sacred that was never theirs. They didn't see you as a friend, a companion, or even an equal. They saw you as a resource, a shortcut to something they couldn't cultivate within themselves. Your peace was a mystery they couldn't replicate. Your wisdom, an intimidating presence in the room, your spiritual clarity, a mirror they weren't ready to face. And rather than walk alongside you, they wanted to walk you. Not out of malice at first, perhaps, but out of envy disguised as admiration. They copied your phrases, imitated your posture, tried on your personality like a costume, forgetting that what is divine cannot be borrowed. It must be embodied. This isn't just poetic talk. There's psychology behind this behavior. It's known as a subtle but real phenomenon, where people attach themselves to emotionally or spiritually rich individuals in order to compensate for their own lack. And when that doesn't work long term, the psychological backlash begins. Many manipulators end up stuck in what researchers call, they try so hard to maintain an image they've stolen or forged that they eventually burn out because authenticity can't be faked forever. The cracks show, the truth leaks out. And just like in Scripture, deception always caves in on itself. Judas betrayed Jesus with a kiss, but couldn't live with the shame. Delilah cut Samson's hair, but couldn't control the consequences. Haman built gallows for Mordecai, but swung from them himself. These aren't just stories. They're spiritual blueprints. What is built on manipulation will always be dismantled by truth. What your enemies didn't understand is that your silence wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. You weren't ignoring the signs, you were watching the pattern unfold. Spiritually, silence is often a battleground. It's where God speaks the loudest. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes that you were discerning which was which. You were letting them show their cards, reveal their motives, expose their agenda. And they did, every last one. They thought you were naive, but you were divinely strategic. You weren't reacting because your spirit was absorbing. That is not cowardice. It's divine calibration. So no, chosen one, you didn't lose. You were losing. You were the test they failed. A spiritual litmus paper that exposed the acidity in their souls. And now that they're gone, you're not broken. You're blessed. You were the mirror they couldn't look into because your very existence reminded them of everything they tried to skip. Discipline, humility, purpose. That's why they feared you. That's why they tried to use you. But their strategy was flawed from the beginning because your value was never up for auction. It was sealed by the hands of the one who made you. Let them wrestle with their regrets. Let them choke on the silence you left behind. Meanwhile, keep rising, keep shining. What they meant for harm, God has already flipped it into your platform. Your glow isn't just a vibe, it's a declaration. It says, not bitter, not broken, but brighter than ever. Let your elevation be your response, because now, more than ever, your light can't be ignored. And that, chosen one, is divine justice in motion. Point 2. They thought they could control what they didn't create. You're not a product on a shelf, dressed up in slick branding and polished slogans, waiting for the world's approval like a commodity in a storefront. You're not a brand crafted for market trends or digital applause. You are a living, breathing vessel, designed by divine intelligence, intentionally formed with purpose far greater than likes, follows, or fleeting validation. But sadly, many people have missed that truth. They couldn't interpret your stillness, so they mistook it for weakness. They couldn't understand your self-control, so they labeled it as passivity. In their limited view, your humility looked like submission, and your kindness became a target for manipulation. These are the same people who tried to edit your narrative as if your destiny was some group project they could control. They offered opportunities like bait, not blessings. They pretended to open doors while silently hoping you'd remain small enough to never walk through them. But here's the truth. Divine purpose doesn't yield to manipulation, and sacred calling cannot be micromanaged. What they failed to realize is that when they tried to bend your destiny to fit their ego, they weren't just offending you, they were offending the one who sent you. This is where spiritual law enters the picture. It's not superstition, it's not wishful thinking, it's principle. Every major spiritual tradition, from Christianity to ancient Jewish thought to Eastern philosophies, teaches that when someone attempts to interfere with divine assignment, there are consequences. Not because the universe is cruel, but because divine order is structured with precision. In Christianity, this concept is echoed in Romans 8:31. If God is for us, who can be against us? That's not a motivational quote. It's a declaration of spiritual reality. No force can derail what God has set into motion. Any attempt to hijack your path is not only futile, it's spiritually hazardous. Being consecrated means you've been set apart, not just for success, but for sacred use. You weren't designed to follow trends, you were meant to set them. Your life is not a commercial, it's a calling. When people try to mold your journey to suit their plans, they cross a spiritual boundary. They're no longer interfering with just you, they're interfering with something holy. That's why their power is crumbling. That's why their influence feels shaky, their strategies keep falling through. And the favor they once relied on, it's slipping away. This isn't coincidence or cosmic karma, it's divine rebalancing. You can't steal what heaven has signed and sealed. And so while they're busy analyzing their failures, wondering why doors keep closing, you're rising, you're thriving. The very light they tried to dim is now illuminating your path. And you don't have to clap back, throw shade, or launch a counterattack. Just keep moving forward, keep building, keep glowing in the grace they thought they could block. Because your elevation speaks volumes. It's louder than revenge, more powerful than payback. Your growth is the evidence. Your joy is the response. So no, you are not a brand. You are not a trend. You are a beacon, lighting the way not because you crave attention, but because purpose burns too brightly to be hidden. Keep rising, not to prove anyone wrong, but to prove that no force on earth can stop what was divinely ordained. Point 3. They promised people access to your essence. They didn't just take from you. You. Like spiritual contraband at a clearance sale, your essence was handed out without caution, without consent, and certainly without comprehension of its worth. Imagine this. Your divine presence, your wisdom, your spiritual anointing being treated like party favors at a celebration you weren't even invited to. You weren't flattered, you were fragmented. What they did wasn't admiration, it was spiritual theft in its rawest form. You were the well, the spring, the living source of something divine, and instead of honoring that, they let the masses line up with empty cups, expecting a refill. But here's what they forgot. Access to sacred energy is not a group discount. It comes with reverence, not entitlement. There is a deeper truth behind this misuse. Your energy is, and the exchange rate is divine. When someone passes around your gifts like samples on a tray, it's not kindness. It's a violation of spiritual law. They treated your sacredness as common. They handed out your light without even asking whether it was theirs to share. But in the spiritual realm, there are boundaries. Heaven doesn't turn a blind eye when something consecrated is desecrated. One of the unwritten laws of the Spirit is simple but unshakable. And when it's not, heaven intervenes. Grace may be abundant, but it's not naive. Now, you're witnessing the fallout. The same people who once siphoned from your soul are now walking through dry seasons. Their opportunities are drying up. Their connections are collapsing. Their clarity is clouded. Why? Because they thought your power was ornamental, something nice, something optional. They didn't realize your presence was divine assignment. You weren't there for their emotional convenience. You were there on a God-ordained mission. And once divine access is revoked, no apology or sweet talk can reopen that spiritual door. They weren't just losing, they were losing the access to the kingdom flow that followed you. But make no mistake, this isn't about revenge or resentment. This isn't you playing victim or craving drama. This is about when someone mishandles the vessel, they lose access to the oil. When they dishonor the well, the water stops flowing. It's not personal, it's divine order. You're not being too sensitive or overreacting. You're finally recognizing that what you carry is. Your presence is not meant to be casually consumed, it's meant to. That glow isn't for exploitation, it's for. You were never a spiritual vending machine, giving out wisdom and warmth at the press of a button. You are a living altar, a sacred space, anointed and appointed. And altars are not to be touched without reverence. What you carry wasn't meant to entertain, it was meant to awaken. You're not here for surface-level exchanges, you're here to shift atmospheres, break generational chains, and usher in divine change. That's not small, that's not ordinary, that's kingdom work. So to the one reading this, guard your gate. Be fiercely selective with who gets access to your energy. Your shine is not public property. It is not a trophy for others to display. You are not a souvenir, you are a sanctuary. What heaven placed in you is, and your responsibility is to protect it, like the sacred inheritance it is. No more pouring into hands that leak, no more casting pearls before those who cannot perceive their value. It's time to honor yourself the way heaven does. Point 4, they ignored the sacredness of your silence. You didn't shout, you didn't clap back, you didn't slam doors or deliver a dramatic monologue. You simply stayed still. You stayed silent. And in that sacred, deliberate silence, you released a force far more powerful than any raised voice could ever achieve. The world often equates silence with weakness, assuming that if you're not making noise, you must be powerless. But what they didn't realize is that silence isn't surrender. It's a form of spiritual strategy. It's a refined blend of emotional intelligence and divine timing, something that can't be taught by mere experience, only understood by walking through fire without letting the flames dictate your response. In today's culture, everyone's fighting to be heard, scrambling to say the last word, to win the argument, to drag someone on social media. But true power is often held by the one who doesn't speak at all. That's not passivity, it's presence. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows they don't need to validate themselves through verbal warfare. Proverbs 17:28 gives us a profound piece of wisdom. Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent, and discerning if he holds his tongue. This isn't just a biblical verse, it's an ancient psychological tactic. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do in chaos is remain grounded, unmoved, and observant. Silence allows truth to rise to the surface while chaos eventually burns itself out. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies in behavioral psychology show that silence can be disarming, especially to individuals who thrive on conflict or control. When you don't feed their drama, they're forced to confront the void they can no longer fill with manipulation. That silence you offered wasn't empty, it was a mirror. And what they saw in that reflection disturbed them. Your lack of response left them exposed, unsettled, wondering why they couldn't provoke you. And in that uncertainty, they began to wrestle, not with you, but with their own conscience. What they never anticipated was how that silence would echo days later, weeks later. Even in their quiet moments, your silence would whisper back to them, not as guilt trips or accusations, but as truth. You didn't retaliate because you didn't need to. You weren't looking for revenge. You were aligning with something greater. You were aligning with peace, with God, with your higher purpose. And while they were spinning in circles, trying to understand what went wrong, you had already moved forward. You weren't stuck in the drama. You were rising above it. This is the essence of spiritual warfare. Not all battles are fought with swords. Some are fought with silence, with restraint, with the wisdom to know that reacting gives the enemy what they want, a piece of your energy. And you, being spiritually grounded, knew better than to offer that up for free. Instead, you chose to let grace fight for you. You allowed peace to become your protector and silence to become your shield. So let this be the lesson. You don't have to shout to be strong. You don't have to speak to be heard. Your peace speaks volumes. Your silence isn't the absence of a response, it's the response. And for those who tried to pull you into chaos, nothing is more devastating than realizing they can no longer reach you. While they try to understand the quiet storm you've become, you keep walking in peace. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Point 5. Their karma is public. Your glory is protected. Have you ever noticed how the loudest voices in the room often belong to those who are trying the hardest to distract from their inner turmoil? Their volume isn't a sign of confidence, it's a cloak. Beneath the surface of their animated stories and attention-grabbing theatrics lies a mess of insecurity, fear, and often envy. These people crave the spotlight not because they've earned it, but because it keeps others from seeing their truth. They stir drama like a pot they live off of, fueled by gossip, misinformation, and carefully crafted narratives designed to shift the focus away from their shortcomings. And often their favorite target is the one who never asked for attention, you. Yes, the quiet strength you carry can be deeply unsettling to those who define themselves by noise. While they craft their identity through spectacle and applause, your calm presence, your refusal to engage in petty games, and your quiet growth stands as a silent rebuke to their chaos. This is why they tried to sabotage your image. They whispered lies into ready ears, painted you in colors you never wore, and tried to rewrite your story before it was even told. Not because you were weak, but because your authenticity exposed their performance. Your light threatened their shadows. But life, especially a life guided by divine principles, has a way of flipping the script. While they were busy engineering your downfall, God was writing a better ending, not in public, not with drama, but in the still places where real power takes root. Biblical wisdom reminds us in Isaiah 60:22, "When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen." This isn't just poetic, it's a promise. True elevation comes quietly. It doesn't need applause or audience approval. It manifests in sudden breakthroughs, in peace that doesn't make sense, and in unexpected doors that swing open just when you were about to give up. And then the tables turn. The very people who schemed against you now face the consequences of their own actions. The chaos they sent out returns to their doorstep. Not because you retaliated, but because universal and divine law never forgets. Galatians 6:7 says it clearly, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." Their seeds of envy bore fruit, but it was bitter. And now the same people who mocked your silence are forced to sit in theirs, watching you walk into favor that cannot be fabricated. Throughout it all, you didn't have to clap back. You didn't need a mic drop or a social media rant. Your growth became your response. Your success became your vindication. You practiced the wisdom found in Proverbs 17:27. The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered. You mastered the energy in the room instead of matching it. That's strength. That's maturity. That's divine confidence. In a world addicted to noise, silence becomes sacred, especially when it's accompanied by results. People may not understand your quiet, but they can't ignore your rise. You now walk with clarity, unburdened by the need to prove anything. The whispers about you have faded into the background, replaced by something much louder, your undeniable transformation. So let the performers continue their show. Let them chase applause while you pursue purpose. Because when God's hand is on your life, your progress speaks louder than their performance ever could. Point 6. They realized too late you were the blessing. You were never just a supporting character in someone else's story. You were the plot twist they never saw coming, a divine appointment, not a coincidence. While others moved through life chasing attention and validation, you were busy embodying quiet strength. You weren't the loudest in the room, but your presence shifted atmospheres. That co-worker clinging to dreams on life support. You spoke life into those fading embers. That friend left in the cold by the world, you showed up, not once but consistently. Your laughter healed, your silence calmed, your compassion restored. What made you special was never flashy. You didn't make grand declarations of how good you were, your goodness wasn't performative, it was embedded like muscle memory. You didn't give to be noticed, you gave because it's who you are. You listened with full attention, not waiting for your turn to speak. You loved people in the way they didn't even know they needed. That kind of energy, it's rare. Sacred even, but sacredness is often misunderstood, and while some were blind to it, others saw it all too clearly and tried to exploit it. Psychology explains this tendency through something called, it's when people undervalue what is always accessible. Because you were consistently kind, they mistook it for weakness. Your steady loyalty became background noise, your emotional generosity was taken as something owed. They thought they could turn your light on when they needed you and flick it off when they didn't, but grace, real grace, has boundaries that are not built in bitterness but rooted in divine discernment. And when grace departs, it doesn't throw a tantrum. It walks away in silence, letting the echo of absence teach the lesson presence never could. What they didn't understand is that your patience wasn't passive, it was spiritual. You saw the manipulation, the masked intentions, the subtle digs behind fake smiles. You were never fooled, but instead of calling it out in anger, you chose mercy. That's not weakness. That's divine patience, measured not in how long you wait, but in how well you hold your peace. That patience became their test, and sadly, they failed it. While they remained stuck in cycles of ego and envy, you were quietly evolving. There's a cost to spiritual blindness. When people are too consumed with themselves to recognize the divine wrapped in ordinary human form, they miss their blessing. And what's worse, they sometimes mistreat it. But life has a way of circling back. Call it karma, divine justice, or simply consequence. Whatever the name, it has perfect vision. Karma doesn't come with a roar, it arrives like a whisper, revealing truths too heavy to ignore. It's not vengeful, it's educational. It opens the eyes of the ignorant, not to destroy, but to awaken. Now you're in a new season, one where your peace has become your weapon, your silence, a boundary, your absence, a message, and from that distance they begin to see. You were never just the nice one, just the friend or just the co-worker. You were the anchor, the healer, the unexpected miracle wrapped in human skin. A divine presence they were too distracted to cherish, and now they don't get to claim your light because divinity doesn't dwell where it's not honored. You've risen with clarity, you walk with purpose, and you understand now being underestimated was never your curse, it was your cover. But the cover is off, the story is yours, and you're no longer a plot twist. You are the author. Point 7, they see you rising, and it terrifies them. Spirit warriors, they can't deny it anymore. Your glow is, and no, it's not from diamonds or designer brands. It's from survival. It's from the dark nights of the soul where you wrestled with fear, rejection, and betrayal, and didn't just make it out, but. This glow is the result of every storm you endured and every valley you walked through without applause. You're not just existing anymore, you're radiating. And that radiance, it didn't come from external validation, it came from God, from growth and from grit. You walk lighter now, not because life got easier, but because you laid down the burdens that were never yours to carry. The judgment of others dropped. The fear of not being enough dissolved. The limitations they placed on you broken. Each step you take today is lighter because you refuse to stay in spiritual chains. This isn't just emotional growth, it's spiritual evolution. It's what happens when you stop asking for permission to be powerful and finally reclaim your freedom. Not the freedom the world offers, but the kind only God can give, freedom of the soul. And let's talk about that glow. It's not contouring or camera filters, it's divine light, evidence of God's hand on your life. It's the result of choosing to forgive when it was easier to hold grudges, of choosing to heal when bitterness felt justified. It's the fire in your eyes that speaks volumes before your mouth ever does. That glow is your spiritual resume. It says, but I've been through battles, and I didn't just survive, I grew, I transcended. And that's what they tried to dim. They whispered, they doubted, and they manipulated, thinking you'd shrink under pressure. But you didn't shrink, you bloomed. See, they mistook your stillness for weakness. But silence is where discernment is sharpened. In betrayal, you found intuition, and in rejection, you found redirection. Every hardship was heaven's classroom. And now you're walking with purpose because who you are. That kind of clarity is dangerous to people who benefited from your confusion. And here's what they missed. You were never meant to stay buried. You were a seed, planted, not buried. And now your rise is sending shockwaves. Every step upward, every level you ascend shakes the very foundation they built to keep you down. They can't deny your progress anymore. You've become living proof that God's favor will always find its mark, even if it's hidden for a season. Your elevation is teaching them lessons their pride refused to learn. And the truth? Your anointing has nothing to do with popularity. It's not charisma, it's divine assignment, and it's wrapped in strategy only heaven could design, because the weapons form, but they didn't prosper. Your life is a walking testimony that no opposition, no slander, no spiritual attack could cancel what God called into motion. Every time you rise, they hear it louder. This one is, you're not here by chance. You're rising on purpose, with purpose. And that's the kind of rising that be stopped. Let them gossip. Let them doubt. By the time they see the light, you'll be too far above for them to reach. Because once the glow becomes visible, it's already too late to dim it. You've been elevated, not by public opinion, but by divine decision. So here's your truth, chosen one. You were never designed to fit in. You were designed to be hidden in plain sight, protected while others misunderstood your worth. And those who once disrespected your value, they're now facing the spiritual invoice. Because nothing goes unnoticed in God's economy, so walk boldly. Guard your spirit. Don't ever apologize for how bright you shine, because that glow, it's not just light, it's legacy. It's evidence that what they tried to use against you, God flipped for your elevation. Until next time, spirit warriors, stay awakened, stay armored, and never forget, you the storm they never saw coming.